First meeting of the Capital Improvement Committee. I'd like to begin with introductions, starting with Brian.
Sorry, I just had a big old bug.
That's not- Is that your name?
Brian Rose, Planning and Zoning Administrator for the town.
Lowell Von Ruden, Community Rep. Kevin Rigstead, Community Rep.
Gail Lebrecht, Community Rep.
Tim Redmond, Chairman.
David Pierce, Selectman's Representative.
Ivan Beliveau, Budget Committee Representative.
Thank you, everybody. We'll begin with some minutes we have from June the
30th?
30th. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the minutes?
No.
I'm waiting for anybody else to speak up.
I'll move to accept the minutes as written.
Ivan, do you have any? Okay, no comments, okay. Lowell, please.
I'll move to accept the minutes of June 30th as written.
Lowell motion by Lowell, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ivan, so the minutes to be accepted as written. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain.
Abstain.
I was
Two
absent.
abstentions. Everyone else votes in the affirmative. Okay, the second set of minutes was for, what was the other date?
The
July
7th.
July the 7th.
Were those emailed out earlier?
I think the email never went out.
Okay, so
This might be
this is
the first time
we've
you're
seen
looking
them
at it.
then.
I
we
was
should put
checking
those
that
off.
today, and I think it never got sent.
Well, I wasn't
I
at,
thought it had, so.
if you'd like to vote on the minutes, it might be a good idea, because if we do finish our matrix tonight, we will not be meeting again, so I did look them over at home. I wasn't at the meeting, but anyway. Anybody have any comments or questions or changes?
No.
Seeing none, I'll accept the motion.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as written.
Motion by Kevin, excuse me, to accept them as written. Any second? Second by Ivan. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I abstain.
Abstain.
Abstain also.
We have 3 abstentions, Lowell, myself, and Dave. Thank you, Kevin.
Yes.
Okay. At our last meeting, we left off, we were discussing the matrix and moving things around. The new matrix in front of you is an updated matrix based on our changes from our last session. So where we left off was beginning with the school department on page 6. Line 243, starts with the Bartlett School. Everybody up to speed? Okay, line 244 are the building performance upgrades. The school department has been involved with this program for many years, and it looks like they have another 4 years on the matrix to go. They have proven to us by way of data that they are actually saving money on their energy costs because of this, these upgrades they're performing at the 2 schools. We'll get to Maple Avenue later. So I don't see any reason to make any adjustments to this line if everyone is in agreement.
Sounds good.
Okay. Then the next line is 245. It's the Bartlett Phase 2 renovations. This will be forwarded to the voters in the form of a warrant article. I don't see that we need to mess with it at all, because we can't reduce it, we can only move it out. So moving it out, I don't feel would be any advantage to anybody. Anybody else have any other comments on this line 245?
No.
All right, so we will leave the bond article, warrant article of Phase 2 renovations alone. 248 is the boiler replacement. We'll go to Maple Avenue School next. 248 is a boiler replacement, which is out in 2014. The note in the margin says this was pushed out 1 year for expenditure balancing purposes, so it was the school department's decision to make it in 2014. Line 249, next page. Maple Avenue School, oil tank replacement. This is a new project. They are stating that if the bond passes, it's going to become part of the total renovation project. At our deliberations, I talked with the school department here at this session, and I suggested they move it up due to the fact that they had a problem with the high school oil tank, but they do not seem to have decided to do that, so it will remain in 2014 unless anyone sees fit to move it.
A question on the line 248 boiler replacement at Maple Avenue. Was that also something that they would do if, be part of the renovation project if the bond was proposed? Or was
I
that
think they
entirely
said that, even though it doesn't say that note in the margin. I think I
Okay.
remember them saying that.
Yeah, I think I had it in my notes that way.
They were going to do the boiler replacement and the fuel tank as a combined project.
That's what I thought it was too.
I think that's what the business agent told us, Ray.
All right.
The next one is the roof replacement, line 250. The margin of note says that, notes in the margin say that it was pushed out another year by the school department, so it's been priority rated as a 3, so they must not think that it's an emergency, so I see their reasoning for moving it out. Now, the next line is 251, it's the facilities renovation work. This is tied to the same bond that the Bartlett School project is in. So once again, unless anybody sees any reason to fool with it, I suggest we leave it alone and let the school department deal with it. Any comments or questions?
You're speaking of line 251, is that correct?
Line 251, the
Okay.
facilities renovation. It's 4 million this year, and it's 5 million in 2013.
Do I remember correctly, was this the one they were talking about that, like the Bartlett bond was finishing up and this was picking up, or am I?
No,
thinking of
the discussion was that the Maple Avenue School bond, the Mountain View Middle School bond was gonna
Oh, that's,
be retired at some point either this year, I believe. If you check your matrix, when you come down, you'll see that the, doesn't show. The
August-
bond,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
On the notes when they were presenting, they said August 15th of this year that bond would be retired.
That's right. So, in normal fashion, when a bond is retired on a school, they like to be prepared to start another project, and this project is replacing the bond that the Mountain View Middle School has been retiring.
So I was remembering the general idea, just the wrong school.
Just a quick overview, they grouped 4 projects for one bond. Phase 2 at Bartlett School, renovations at Maple Avenue, the Goffstown High School auditorium, if you will, or whatever that room is called, renovations.
Theater, wasn't
The
it?
theater renovations. And the 4th project was the, moving the track from Barnard Park to the high school grounds and building a brand-new track facility. So those 4 projects make up that one bond. Okay, so the line 251, we're not gonna do anything with it, we'll leave it alone. And once again, we're back to the building performance upgrades, 252. Same thing as what we talked about at the other school, and they are working out very well and they're saving money. Mountain View Middle School, line 255. I wonder about that statement, Brian. Do you know why they say to be refinanced? Existing bonds, in other words, to make up the new bond? Is that what we're reading?
that line item is actually not really any kind of issue at this point. This 305,250 is for the 2011 adopted budget, so it's
Okay.
the last time that,
Yep.
and that was this year basically, but we're talking about next year, so.
Okay,
There's nothing going forward for that line.
okay, so that line could almost disappear after that. Well, it shows because it was in last year's budget, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, refurbish the Hilltop Gym and Cafe. They have, you can read, the memo talks about what they want to do. They've got it in 2014, so it's way out, 3 years. Next line is the boiler replacement at Mountain View, once again, in 2014. You keeping up?
Mhm.
And then line 258 is the oil tank replacement at 130,000 in 2014.
What I noticed on these boiler and oil tank replacements, you made those comments that you thought they should be pushed up. What it looks like they've done is increased the priority by one notch on all of these, from their original submission anyhow, but
Mhm.
that's what it looks like they've done. They haven't necessarily pushed them up in years, they
Okay.
increased the priority.
Okay, line 259, to resurface the gym floor, that is from a 2011, so there is nothing in this year's matrix that is involved with that. And the last line on 260 is the new roofing system, once again, 2014. So all the submissions for the Mountain View School are out in 2014, so we don't really need to move any of those unless somebody sees fit to move one or two of them in either direction. Seeing none?
Unless you go back to your oil tank discussion.
Well, the only thing I can say to that, Kevin, was that I made a clear case to the business agent, Ray, and Sue was here from the school board. They heard it all. I'm sure they're related to the school board, and if they saw fit not to move it, then I don't think we should move it.
Okay.
It's their budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Next part, section is the Goffstown High School. We have line 263, which is refurbish the cafe flooring for a gym expansion, once again, 2014. But then the next line is part of that bond that we talked about. Build a new Goffstown High School track and jump facility. That is in this year for $800,000.
Do we know what the total bond value is right now with all those projects? Are they?
I think we kicked the number around about 16 million, if I'm not mistaken.
It's on the next page.
Oh, okay.
Line,
I wrote up just my own chicken scratch, and I made up 16,409, but I could be wrong.
line 209,
There it is, yeah.
286 is the
286.
total.
You were close.
How much was
on
it, Brian?
Proceeds,
Yeah, you're right, 16 million.
16,209.
I had 16,409. I guess I transposed the number wrong.
And that's a 20-year bond, it looks to be.
Well, that's what they would be proposing, I assume. Okay, let's get back to line 264, which is the high school track and jump facility. That's gonna be part of that bond. That's 800,000 this year and 1.5 million in 2013. So that reflects the total cost of that project. Carpet replacement is in 2013. And then next, the fourth portion of that bond is line 266, which is the GHS Theater infrastructure improvement and construction of a storage facility. I forgot about that part. The old building that was outside, the portable classrooms, they used to use them to store items for the theater. And when the roofs caved in by the snow and ice, they have to store that stuff in the hallways now, and they created a fire hazard, so they had to deal with that. They explained that to us at the previous meeting. So those two big numbers for this year, plus the other two, combine that bond.
I have a question on that area. So when I took the notes on the rebuild Barnard track facility, at the time when they presented, they had $250,000 to upgrade the Barnard Park, and then they also had the proper overall bond for all the projects within it. Did that Barnard Park language get removed?
Yeah, we talked about that, didn't we?
Oh, yes.
I didn't
Well, it
see
must be,
There was-
because it's not in here anymore. It says new Goffstown High School track and jump facility.
I changed it from rebuild to build new.
Okay,
That was one of the changes I'd made a couple meetings ago.
so there's no intent to fix the current Barnard Park track? It's all about the new track?
It's all about building a new track.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brian, I think in the note on line 266, the GHS theater infrastructure, you don't make any mention of the fact that that will also be part of a bond financing via a bond, so maybe if there's room to squeeze that in somewhere, it would just show that it's not a standalone project, it's part of that bond. Okay, 267 is improve the event parking and hardscape traffic areas for 50,000, that's in 2013. So basically, it looks like the only thing the school department is asking for this year in our matrix is the performance upgrades to continue on the two schools, plus the monies for the bond to cover phase two at Bartlett School, the facilities work at Maple Avenue, the new high school track, and the GHS improvements, theater improvements. So far.
When you bond $16 million, obviously that's $16 million if it's approved and it's a 20-year plan, it's paid out over 20 years. What portion of that is paid in 2012 that actually the taxpayers pay for it in 2012?
I would have to say I don't know the answer to that, and possibly Don might have some insight that he could lend just for general bond
I
information.
could guess, but I'd rather the information come from Ray, from the SAU, because he'd have a schedule, some sort of a projected schedule on that. He would probably give you a better answer.
Okay.
Could it possibly be the way it's laid out, you know, like in
think it goes
2012 and
the next
13,
Depends,
or
too,
not
on how it's
necessarily?
structured.
Well,
I
I don't- I'm
think
not-
from looking at the other ones in the matrix, it starts the next year. It shows the bond in the first year, and then the payment starts
I
the
see.
following.
That's typical from what I've seen.
you'll notice on line 268, the last line on the high school, it is the current bond that they're paying for the GHS renovation and additions that they did. I can't remember how many years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. I don't remember how long ago they did that. But that bond is still going on.
It says it's a 20-year bond paid off in 2021, so it must have been
Okay.
2001.
Okay, so it's been a lot longer than 7 years. Okay, Glen Lake School, they're not asking for anything at the Glen Lake School. District-wide, they're asking for $300,000 to be placed in the capital reserve fund for the Bartlett School, which is an unreserved fund balance. I don't understand this one myself, and I wish Ray was here to explain it. Maybe somebody else can explain it to me. If we're going for a bond to the last of the upgrades over there, why are we asking also for a capital reserve? Is this a backup plan for the, with possible,
I recall he had stated in the meeting that it was just an attempt to lower the amount of what the bond was gonna be, and it probably wouldn't be significant, obviously, since it's 16 million versus 300,000, but he said they have 300,000 sitting there waiting that they would be able to,
they currently have 300,000?
I thought he had said something like that.
He said-
And then they were gonna request an additional 300,000, so that would make 600,000 they could put towards it all up front, that they wouldn't have to put onto the bond, and that would lessen the impact.
Okay.
Yeah, they currently have 344,000 in the account. He said, if we add 300,000, same year as the bond, it works to pay down the interest charges up front. He
So,
didn't,
does anyone want to offer an opinion on line 274? Should we keep it? Leave it in place? The only thing is that if we do leave it in place, and should the ballot article not pass for the big deal, the 16 million, at the very least, we will continue to save $300,000 a year towards work that will need to be done on the school if the bond article should fail.
Well, he only had it on there as a one-time request. He didn't have it on there for each year, 300,000,
Well, it's on for,
just 2012. You're looking at line 273,
Yeah,
274, sorry.
74.
So the bond that they're talking about is the large bond, the $16.2 million bond?
Mhm. What they're wanting to do is lump it all into one big bond because,
We-
I guess it seems easier to get one bond approved than 4 separate bonds or 5 separate bonds or whatever it is.
And I did ask if they had a backup plan, and the statement was they didn't want to choose between the schools. They didn't want to fix the Bartlett School and neglect the Maple Avenue School, or vice versa. They wanted to, seemed they wanted to do both schools simultaneously.
They saw them as both equally important.
So I guess we should leave the 300,000 in, it would be my opinion to leave it in. What, anybody else want to offer an opinion? I'm not hearing anything.
This $300,000 is part of the $16.2 million?
Well, that's a separate number from it. The 16
It would decrease the amount of the bond, so the 16 would be decreased
640
by
minus-
300,000.
No, it'd be by
or by
600,
600,000,
640
really.
it would be.
Yeah,
So 640 from 6.1 million would mean they'd borrow
15 point whatever.
15 point something million.
Yeah.
That's complicated to explain to the taxpayers.
They can explain it, it's the school department.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like,
Don, please.
Tim, I just would like to add briefly, most of the articles, if this is in a separate warrant article, usually the articles are written with language like, to authorize the issuance of up to, and then an amount with the bonding. So it sounds to me, just from listening to this, that CRF amount might indeed lower the amount to be borrowed. I mean,
Right.
that's in general how they're written.
So if they did get the bond approved and they got the capital reserve improved, they would be authorized to bond up to a certain amount, but could borrow less if they
Yes,
saw fit.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, good, thank you, Don. Well, then I guess we should leave it alone and see how it plays out. Well, there's your line 276. I don't understand it's the elementary schools and high school auditorium renovations and track and field facility construction bond. The first payment would be in 2013, it looks like, Kevin.
yeah.
And then it would be a repayment schedule. Repayment schedule should. Yeah, they only show us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 payments out of a minimum of 20.
Right, right.
So the taxpayers are gonna be responsible for that payment. It looks like it declines slightly over the first 5 years, so I guess it would continue to decline slightly as the years went on.
That is the way that it always happens.
That's how they
Yeah,
they
it
structure
starts
them.
with a higher number and every number goes lower after that until you get to the end.
So basically, the tax impact would be to raise taxes to cover $1 million in 13 and $978 in 14 and on down the line.
Right, okay.
All right. So everybody sees the school totals there? The adopted budget for 2011, they adopted $1,700,000 approximately in expenses. 2012, they're looking for $8,622,000. Then below that are the offsetting revenues. I won't go over all of them because we don't really need to, unless anybody has any questions about them, and then maybe we can talk about one or the other.
Nope.
Now, on 287, Brian, they're showing the capital reserve at 600,000, line 287.
Mhm.
Now, according to Kevin's documents, it should be 340 plus 3 would make it 640,000. So could you confirm or deny that with the school department?
I'll double check that line. It might be that that's the one that's supposed to show as 340. and the
Well,
other.
it's a
the,
proposed 2012. So it's 300,000 on the line,
Right, I think,
But if
line
this were-
274.
If this one were 600,000, and the other bond that, the other 300,000 came in as well, would that make it 900? Or,
well, this is an offsetting revenue, so this is what they already have in the account. So I think with your first statement, it says it should be 344
oh,
would be correct.
I think based on what they have in their fund, plus the proposed 300,000 on line 274, would equal that number approximately, unless there's a typographical error, the 4 may be missing from the 640.
Yeah.
I'll check if it's supposed to be 640.
Because that assumes that the 300,000 capital reserve gets passed.
Oh, I see, yeah.
We don't have the percentage of change in line 290 under the 2012 proposed budget. There must not have been room enough in there for you to write it in.
Sorry? Oh, the numbers.
From 1,000,003 to 8,424, that's how many, 800% or something?
Yeah, I'm
something
not sure
big.
why that didn't calculate. I'll have to look at that.
Well, I noticed that's also a negative 8 million, is that?
I don't understand why there's a
Is
negative.
that because of like the huge influx from the bond, I'm assuming?
That's how they're doing it, right.
It's a percentage increase.
Well, your calculation that's missing, but right above it, the negative is because
Right, so.
the bond
So maybe it ended up
income.
being negative, so that,
Yeah.
so it just chopped it at 0 instead of.
All right, so I think that concludes the schools pages in the matrix. Now typically what we do is we'll go back to page 1, and we will look at priorities briefly.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Brian?
prior to doing the priorities, do we
Okay.
want to go back through and look at the police thing with this handout? And then also the rail trail. I've handed out an updated cost estimate that Dave Pierce has given
Okay.
me, and I emailed that out, and I guess it might be good to just take care of all the items before we go into the ranking of priorities.
Okay, Brian, thank you. All right, we'll go to line 123 on page 3 of your matrix. In police, they're looking for the IMC software. This document that we have in front of us, everybody see which one it is? It's untitled. It's from the police department.
Show the savings for that stuff.
Looks like this.
Everybody see what it looks like? What the chief has done is he's run the numbers on it. I'll let Brian explain it, because he talked to the chief. Why don't you explain it, Brian?
Well, basically, I mean, he just sent me the email, and from looking at it, you can see that there's some items that would be, money. Basically, he's calculating all the different types of savings that he would be able to gain by having this new software. And, you look on there, and there's postage on new accident forms, 661. That's, savings that they're not gonna be spending.
Can we refresh the memory of some of the people that might not have been here? What the chief said was, with the new program, they're able to email or electronically send the accident forms directly to the state via the
Yeah, right now
police
it's a
cruiser computers
lot
if
of
they get
paper
this
pushing.
data, software.
Right now, it's
packet.
a lot of paper pushing.
So right now, they will not be compatible with the new system, so everything they do, they have to do it on paper, and they have to hand do it, and they have to mail it to the
That's right.
DMV.
And so if you look at the bottom, you add all those numbers up of things that they're saving, and it's coming to $32,800 per year that they would save. So, if you look at the cost of the software, it's $159,000. If you put that into 5 years' worth of using the software, you've made up the cost of purchasing the software, and then from there on out, you're saving money.
Hopefully, they don't change it in 5 years, and we have to buy more new software. That's just an assumption.
Well, I'm not sure if this was included in one of those, but I do recall some of the software that people had said comes with automatic upgrades. I'm not sure if this was one of those,
Okay,
but
that's a good point.
um,
Good point, Brian. All right, so, we did not move that software out, so I thank the chief for the
Well-
extra documentation.
The board, the committee never acted on it last time because I had never provided that documentation.
Okay.
So I asked the committee to skip over it and we act on it this time to
All right.
determine whether it was gonna be in the 2012 numbers.
All right, well, does anybody have any comments on this? I open it up to discussion. Ivan, do you?
Well, the chief has down here an hourly rate of 1867, and I don't know if that's the real hourly pay rate, but I mean, the total compensation would be higher than that. So I think the savings is probably higher than that also per year.
Okay. Lowell?
Yeah, and this is only using the software for this one application of transmitting, data to the state. The way you described it, sounded like there were a number of other functions that would help just streamline things internally as well.
Good.
So, yeah, I agree with Ivan that the savings is probably gonna be even more than what he's showing here.
Okay. Kevin, do you have any comments?
No.
Dave? Okay. So, it seems to be, we all seem to be in agreement that we should just leave the software in the 2012 proposed CIP. We'll add this documentation to our folder to join the submission sheet that the chief gave us for that sheet. I'll have to find it later, add it to it. And leave that one as is. Brian, were there any other items that we did not act on? I think that was the only one, or was the rail trail
The
another
rail
one?
trail needed to
Yes.
be
Needed a clarification. on-
updated. And before I give Dave the floor, I wanted to just explain, I made a
What line
last.
are you on?
I'm on line 116
Okay.
on the table.
Is that the rail trail submission?
Yes.
Okay.
I made a last-minute change based on the current project that the town is working on is really a project that should be included in this and never was. It's the TE grant project. And so we're spending that money in 2012, and so we really should be putting this on. Now, the difference with that is it's really all money that's coming from other sources than the tax dollars, so it's not gonna be impacting the request. So if you look, I put a $395,360, which is the total cost of that TE grant project. That's in 2012.
Where do you get that number from, Brian? Was it off of this back sheet, number 4?
That's the cost of that's the amount that we were awarded for the grant project, or the amount of the cost of the project. The amount of the grant is less, and if you'll turn to the offsetting revenues page,
5.
page 5, line 191, no, I'm sorry, 190. Looks like I might
Have the
need to
line above it.
I might need to delete line 191, it's a duplicate. There's a 316,288, that's the amount of the TE grant that we're gonna receive. Now, just above that, there's a 79,072. That is the dollar amount that will be coming from recreation impact fees that will be for the match for that grant.
Okay.
Those
So-
two values add up to 395,
Right, so those
360.
fully offset that 395 that's in the, that's on line 116. Now, if you look further
So,
on,
can we just clarify, Brian, that the 2012 proposed CIP is not a request for funding? That's something you already have, and it's going to be
That's-
spent in that
right.
2012?
right,
Okay.
so that's just documenting what's in the works and a project that money's gonna be spent on through grant money and so forth. Now, the next line, I'm sorry, back on line 116 of the table, you'll see in 2013, there's a 292,000. That number was what we were originally calculating as 400,000 previously, up till now, in the packet. That's what the worksheet had been submitted as. When Dave went back and revised the numbers, we had looked at his old handout from last time, and it had said 330,000. You know, there was that discrepancy of 330 versus 400, so we wanted to reconcile that. And then also Dave went ahead and updated the numbers based on additional project work that's already been completed from other grants and things like that. So now the total cost to be finishing the rail trail project is $292,000. So
Where'd that number come from?
that, and I'll
the
turn
same.
that to Dave now, if he can maybe explain.
So before Dave begins to explain, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Dave, the 233,600 should be substituted with 292?
The 230, what I've shown as 233,600
Yes.
is hopefully what we would get as a grant, another grant.
Okay,
And then the remaining would be 58,400.
which will add up to the 292.
That would add up to the 292.
Thank you, Brian. Turn the floor over to Dave.
The previous amount listed for the rail trail construction up to now was using a 2010 estimate. Were the trail completely built in 2010, what would it have cost, and under a single contract, commercial contract? And was listed as 333,000. Well, that was 2010. This is looking at what would be the cost if it was 2013, what would be required at that point in time to complete up the full specifications, the remaining sections of the trail. In the meantime, some have already been built. So the handout you have before you today shows that there is, in 2013, there would be 3¼ miles of trail left to be built. And I've just, for engineering purposes, I broke that 3¼ miles into 12 different sections, so I could analyze the unique costs of each section. And ran the numbers, what would be various types of tasks that would be involved in each one of those sections, and it adds up to $292,000.
So these are the 12 sections that are left to be completed, broken
Yes.
down into 12 sections.
Yeah, and that is based on the fact that everything that has been done and everything that will be done in the next, using the money that's already available, that would be 3¼ miles left to bring up the full specification value. So that's a value that would be if the town were to let a single contract to fully upgrade the 3.25 miles, that was about what it would cost.
So the 292 represents an anticipated grant of 233 in 2013.
13.
And tax raised 50-some thousand dollars by way of
It
tax?
doesn't, we're not saying how that 58's being raised.
Okay.
It
Well,
could be,
we're very happy you came in to explain this
It could
tonight,
be-
because it wasn't,
it could be tax money, yes,
could be donation.
could be a donation, could be park impact, could be a little combination.
Okay. Well, I think it's very well explained, and I appreciate you explaining it, Dave, thank you. So,
The rest of those pages really is, I'm not sure the background of your committee following 5 years of development of the rail trail. The rest of it simply shows you where the trail is, what the ownership status of the 5½ miles is, what has been done, what needs to be done, and then how did I physically calculate the cost.
does the 5½ miles represent the total trail in
Yes, it
Goffstown?
is.
Okay, thank you.
From the village at the Piscataquag River to the Manchester line.
Right.
2012 is a significant year for us. This is the year in which we are spending the Federal Transportation Enhancement Grant to build 3 crosswalks and to fill in a valley that's 23 feet deep, or, carry the trail over the valley in some fashion. Those projects, especially the crosswalks, will be very visible to our residents, that we're physically upgrading portions of the rail trail because they're crosswalks over well-traveled routes. Also, in 2012, Manchester will be building their bridge over the Piscataquag River by Kelly Falls. That is a check that I received, I received a confirmation just 2 days ago that Manchester is still on track to build that bridge in 2012. It will be a single-span, modern metal structure, meaning that the existing piles that are in the water will all be removed. Manchester's in the process of gathering the dollars to do that. When they made an application for their federal TE grant, they shortchanged themselves considerably as to what would be the cost of a bridge. And the mayor is requiring them to make up the difference with private donations.
Well, their original plan was also just to deck the existing.
Well, yes,
bridge,
they
so-
shortchanged themselves because they thought they could just put a simple pedestrian deck on top of the substructure that's already in the water. And they're having-
After the engineers checked it out?
And after the engineers checked it out and other complications, they feel better about putting a completely new, modern bridge there rather than relying on the 100-year-old wooden piles.
Good. Anybody have any questions for Dave?
And in conclusion,
In conclusion, I apologize.
that bridge will be built in 2012. We have a winter. Spring of 2013, you're going to see a considerable number of Manchester residents using their bike trail that's completely built, now coming into Gulfstown. And so our crossings will be built in 2012. Manchester's bridge will be done in 2012. You'll see a significant increase in trail usage, not only from our residents, but from Manchester residents coming out to our town.
Good.
Which leads to this 2013 project for us, if we're successful in getting a grant or otherwise financing it, is to the point, what are the expectations of our residents? The fact that we would have a trail that's passable, but not fully up to specification standards. And even today, residents are saying, what's taking so long to build this trail? So this is just an effort to make it happen all in 1 year, or business as usual. We would continue with $30,000 grants from the state, and the project would lengthen out over many years.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ivan?
Just a quick question, Dave. Acronyms are magnificent when you know them, and they're a nightmare when you don't. What does TE stand for?
Thank you, Ivan.
You said it. In your speech, I heard you say it.
Yes, I did. It's transportation enhancement.
Okay, thank you.
It's a category of grants by Federal Highway, and predominantly for alternative modes of transportation to get cars off the highway.
They're not gonna
So you'll
drive
be able
the
to-
rail to trail, are
You'll
they?
be able to ride your bike to the Verizon Wireless next.
That's right.
To reduce the
Yes.
number of cars by putting
You
more
could,
people on a trail.
You could,
That's
you
the-
could park your car at Surratt Park and get on your bicycle, and in 2.5 miles down the trail, which doesn't take very long on a bicycle, you could be at the ball diamond.
Could we put a maglev monorail over that? You know?
Now, have you
Avoid the
purchased-
sweat?
Probably a bit more than the 292,000 for
We're
that.
getting off the subject here.
Well, let's get back on track here. Any other questions for Dave regarding the rail trails submission?
No.
Seeing none, I say we leave it alone. Does anybody disagree with that? Or does anybody want to move things?
And I thank you for the opportunity to give a little bit more airtime on the full plan for our trail and the future of it.
You're welcome to it. That comes out of the admin section of our book. You're looking for your submission form. It'll be in the admin section. Okay, any other items that we've neglected to take care of, Brian?
I believe that is it, other than the department priorities, or the CIPC priorities.
All right, we'll briefly review the matrix for priorities. The items that we approved in the police department. The 3 vehicles and the motorcycle lease. The priorities apparently would remain. We have no priority listed for the line 13, the CIP priority. I don't think does it really matter, Brian?
I think maybe if the committee just wants to address the priorities that have a dollar figure for 2012 and determine whether or not those are appropriate, I think that would be sufficient probably for priorities.
Well, I would agree with a priority 1 there, because that would be the only priority 1 that we would assign for either of the 3 vehicles, and at the very least, God bless you, the police department needs to get at least 1 new vehicle. Certainly 3 would be great, but at the very least, I'd like to see line 13 be assigned a priority 1 for at least 1 of the vehicles being replaced. Anybody want to say something different? Okay.
The police department did have ones on the other 2 vehicles as well for their priority.
I saw that. All 3 were 1s, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. So you move down to the fire department. Is requesting $250 for the capital reserve fund in this year. We both agree that it's a priority 2. It would be nice to have it if we could get it. Well, they're classifying it as a necessary. Do we agree that it's necessary to do capital reserve for the fire department? Or would it be a desirable?
Isn't the fire department the one that was able to save money by, when they found good deals on various vehicles because they had the money in capital reserve?
They got, the chief was able to apply for a Homeland Security grant for the tower truck for $1,997,000, something.
So I think it's a good idea to have.
So we'll leave it as necessary?
Yeah.
Anybody want to change add an opinion on the subject?
Nope.
Okay. Move down to Public Works, page 2. Proposed items in Public Works on page 2, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that they proposed. CIP this committee has decided to approve 3 of those, the 3 larger ticket items, and the 2 smaller ticket items, we moved them out 1 year to 2013. The first item is a VACON. The Public Works is prioritizing it as necessary. Second one is the dump truck with the plowing and sanding equipment, is a necessary in both cases. And the third item is the Packer, the Volvo white Packer, one-arm truck that picks up the cans. We have no priority on CIP for that one.
For the Packer?
I'm sorry?
For the Packer?
Yes. We have not assigned a priority to it.
Oh, okay.
We have a-
This was the equipment whose article failed in last March.
2 years in a row.
I can't speak to 2 years ago.
Well, it
But
I think it did.
they're, in the results of all the budget deliberations last fall leading into March, the Packer truck was the trash truck, which packs the trash.
Picks
It
up,
wa-
pickup
Yep.
truck.
It was taken out of the CIP and made a separate article, and unfortunately, that article failed. So this is putting it back into the CIP again.
And what do we want to prioritize it at CIP, as a necessary, and agree with the Public Works Department?
I would urge this committee to do that. It, last year was a ideal time, replacing a truck that was 4 years old, and now we're replacing a truck that's 5 years old. And these trucks, we would like to have these trucks replaced on a 4-year schedule. So that schedule was pushed out 1 year, and it's time to make it well.
Okay, so Dave is suggesting a necessary priority. Everyone, you want to make another opinion on the subject, or concur?
I'd agree with that.
I concur.
Ivan? Okay, so we'll prioritize that as a 2. Necessary. We need to prioritize the line number 64. Since we moved it out as a year, I guess we would prioritize that as a 3, because we deemed it desirable. And the same with line 70, the 350 plow truck, as a 3.
Would it be useful if over on the right-hand side, under the memo column for that last item, the line 70,
Okay?
the SOAR Commission, I would like that comment to read simply, SOAR Commission funded 100% of the current vehicle.
Mhm.
The point being is that we're attempting on the SOAR vehicles used for the SOAR activity, we're attempting to have a 50-50 split with vehicle costs between the SOAR Commission and DPW.
Mhm.
The SOAR Commission was gracious enough to fully buy the previous vehicle, which we're attempting to replace. And so it's DPW's turn to step up to the plate and fully fund this vehicle.
Mhm.
And then the goal would be, and any future replacements would be 50-50.
So we won't be doing the back and forth, it'll become a 50-50 after this?
After this one purchase, it would be a 50-50. But so I feel it was useful just to say that the SOAR Commission fully funded the current vehicle, just so it's part of the record.
I think Carl told us that during his
So
submission
it
process.
needs to be part of the record, because we don't know who's gonna be on this.
Well, actually, it was
committee.
part of the record, and I think it's on a submission sheet as well.
There was discussion in the meeting, the minutes for that, I wasn't here for it, so it must have been on the 30th, that, I thought there was like a 25%, did anybody?
That's for the VACCON
That's
truck.
for the VACCON
That-
truck.
Okay.
First item, line 47.
So they, in that case, they proposed that it'd support 25% of that, okay.
It's under the theory that 25% of that truck is vacuuming out sewer lines.
Okay.
The other 75% is vacuuming out storm drain lines.
Okay. So that's a priority 3. And the note in the margin should read that the DPW will fund this vehicle, should it be approved, and future purchases will be on a 50-50 arrangement with DPW and sewer.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to page 3. I don't see any point in doing all these priorities for these vehicles in the out years. What, how come they're not in here? We used to always have them all in here. Did we not just,
They may have inadvertently been deleted somehow.
we generally use,
They're actually on the one that this DPW submitted, so, I mean, I can go back and fill that back in with the numbers that are on there.
well, generally, Brian, it seems in the past that the CIP priority has been the same as the Public Works, all the submission priorities.
Yeah.
And at that time, we have an option to adjust them up or down. So I think in our future matrices, they should just be a mirror image, and then we have the opportunity to
Okay.
change the priority to necessary, urgent, desirable, or deferrable.
I'm going through and filling it in on my sheet
Well,
right now.
It'll come in next time around. You know what would be good if you could have it for me when I do the planning board presentation?
Yep.
Thank you. We go on to page 3. The rest of the Public Works Department has no more submissions on page 3. Parks and Rec has a single request. The priority by their department is a 3. Ours is also a 3. Seems to me that the Parks Department is going to be taking over the maintenance of the rail trail. Is that correct, Dave?
The selectmen has placed that upon their responsibility starting in 2012.
So I would say that we should change our priority to a 2 as necessary, because the Parks Department is borrowing trucks from Public Works on a routine basis.
Mhm.
When they're not available, they don't have a vehicle, they cannot do the work they need to do, so
A smaller truck of that nature would be very useful.
that was Rick's presentation. So I would suggest that a CIP priority on line 100 be changed to a 2 as necessary. Does anybody want to agree or disagree with that? Seeing no discussion, I would move that we change that to a 2.
Sounds good.
Remove it as, make it a necessary. And we can leave the department's priority as a 3. That's their decision. So, even with the items that we moved around this year, the adopted budget for the town vehicles is still 96% more than last year's adopted budget.
Almost
is-
double.
It is. We went from 716,000 last year to 1,406,000 this year. Okay? And some of the out years are odd, because you look at how the numbers decline to where we have negatives, and then we get out to 2017 and we have a 133% increase, so
That's the second bow wave.
the second wave of the
Because-
vehicle line.
Right.
But we didn't really move anything
No,
out
it's-
yet. We moved 2 trucks in the whole matrix.
It's so far out, we're not really looking at it. It's all piled up in that year, I guess.
Okay,
And the adopted 2011 would have been higher had the original CIP number been unchanged through our budget deliberations. We moved vehicles out of CIP into separate articles.
and what was the take, or what did the board get from that information of the articles being all individualized? Did you?
It's risky.
It sort of takes the taxpayers and lets them decide which department they like better,
It does allow.
instead of everybody voting for a budget or not,
Mhm.
so. Okay. We move down to line 111. That was last year's.
Yeah.
Line 112 is software for the land use software. We left it in. It's a 1 in both cases as an urgent, which I agree with. Anybody want to change that urgent to anything of a lower grade?
No.
Seeing none, we go to the town hall flyover. Town flyover, not the town hall flyover.
We
Well,
are,
it includes the town.
I'll try to make a case that that ought to be priority, the 2 priority
From the 3.
from the 3. We are currently working with 2001 imagery for our official decisions on assessments and looking at what you can detect through imagery detection on properties and
And thank you for being the first one to ever say that.
imagery.
I'm gonna tell you, I've
Analysis.
never heard that, I've known it all along, but never heard anybody ever say it. That the assessing department uses flyover information to actually look at someone's lot, check their card, and make sure they haven't built an illegal barn on their property and not paying taxes on it.
Maybe he could look at Google Earth, but
Well.
it's you know,
But I'm glad
it's
you
not-
finally said it,
It's
because
not completely valid.
it's always been said that it was for the Public Works Department so they could properly design the roads for reconstruction. Well,
It's important for assessment.
it's very important
Important
for
for
assessment.
zoning code enforcement too.
So
for me to
there
be able to know if there's
is the
a-
first argument that's been made that there is a revenue side to this flyover. Other than trying to sell the GIS equipment, GIS information to potential engineers who want to use it for subdivision plans and such. So thank you, Dave, for bringing that up. 'Cause I didn't want to be the one to have to do it.
It's like a secret.
Well, I just figured it wasn't
Having
my
worked in
place.
imagery analysis for 20 years, I had to do that.
So I would agree with Dave that we should change that to a necessary. Does anybody want to contradict that opinion?
No, and there they actually prioritized it when they.
I was looking at what foreign militaries were doing, not what people were building in their backyards.
So did you really know where Osama bin Laden was?
Can't comment.
No comment. Okay, moving away from Osama, we'll go down to the Town Hall Revenue Collection Office, which we moved out 1 year. I think. Yes, to 2014,
Yep.
although it didn't make it in the
Yeah, number didn't actually show
2014.
up there.
So we'll have to make sure that shows up in 2014.
No.
And the GTV studio relocation to 2014 also, because we had a discussion about anticipated offsetting revenues. We did not know if we were gonna get them or not, so we opted to move that out, much to Andrew's chagrin. There's no priorities on them. How do we wanna prioritize the, you wanna leave, just mirror the numbers over, the 3 and 4?
I would.
Okay, so we'll make those a 3 for line 114 and a 4 for line 115. The rail trail application grant is listed as a desirable. Well, this year, since it's already funded, I think we can leave it alone. Maybe next year, Dave, when we come back with the 292, we could upgrade that to a necessary if you felt strongly enough to recommend that through the committee.
And we would know the likelihood of actually having an opportunity to apply for the grant.
So we'll leave that up to the committee to adjust that in out years. Library is waiting their turn in line for the new library in several years down the road, so we'll leave that alone. Police, IMC software. It's a necessary. Everybody agree that that is a necessary?
Mhm.
Phase 2 of the communications doesn't matter because it's done this year. This year is the final phase of the communications upgrade. Once again, this is a necessary. The police and fire have both, an urgent rather, both deemed it to be such because it affects the safety of the police officers and the firemen when they don't have communications. And they're going to get a grant, or they're hoping to get a grant. So, I think we should leave it alone. Okay. Fire department has requested station improvements. The chief- Everybody may remember, the chief has reorganized his plan. As opposed to building a brand-new station, he wants to make some major upgrades to the existing stations, and he has laid it all out for us, starting with 2012. We do not have a priority assigned to that, so if all is in agreement, we could mirror the fire department's recommendation as a Class 2 necessary.
Concur?
That concludes the fire department's part of that. Move down to the parks. They're looking for line 137 for $40,000 to upgrade the Roy Park Playground. After the discussion with the Parks Director, once again, he said how badly the playground was, and it was actually some, I can't paraphrase, but I thought he said it was really not usable
Right.
in its current condition.
In trouble, yes.
So we can leave that as a necessary if everyone concurs.
Concur?
Okay, we move down to the road plan. And in past years, we've always left the road plan up to the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee to change that as they see fit. We cannot change the dollar amount here, so we have no options except to just send it through. or push it out and eliminate it for the year, so I don't see that we really need to do that. Dave, do you have a comment?
I request that in the various tasks under the road plan, that two of the titles be slightly modified to be clearer as this piece of paper continues to march through the
Two
future.
of the titles?
Yes, in under, well, whatever the, the third column over.
Yes.
Line 166.
166.
That's on the next page.
I'm
Those,
getting there.
It's part of road plan.
well, those aren't necessarily the road plan, were they?
Well, it's under the, excuse me, Public Works. Excuse me.
Public Works, right.
Public Works. Oh, so I'm sorry. Mr. Chair, you were discussing line 144. If you want to continue to march through it line by line, please
We will.
do so.
We will.
Okay.
So we'll leave the road plan alone, we'll let the next two committees deal with the numbers, because we don't have the option of changing the number. South Mass Drainage Bond Payment, that is something that's done, we have to leave it alone. It is a bond payment. They're requesting line 147, 71,000 for the West Lawn Cemetery expansion, listed as a necessary. They've explained how that's gonna generate revenue, so it's good to go. Next one down is 149, Mast Road Drainage. Be clear that that Mast Road drainage is not in the village, that is in the Pinardville section of town, in the vicinity of where the sewer work has been done. It was discovered that the drainage is all eroded and corroded and non-functional, so that's why that's in there.
So more road work next year?
Side roads, yeah, too.
I'm sure it's also gonna take place on Mast Road as well. The Worthley Hill Road drainage upgrade. This is something, it's listed as an urgent. And I, for one, feel that this project is overrated. This project is tied to the development that's supposed to happen above it, although this is the downhill recipient of that water. And the end result of that project that was approved by the planning board actually reduces the amount of water that's being sent into the Worthley Hill Road drainage below the project. So, I for one think that this is overrated, so I'm gonna put it out to the committee to discuss it.
So you're just suggesting reducing the priority a level, or?
Well, I'm suggesting reducing the priority level and possibly moving it out. But I wanted to, because if you read here, it says removed from the road plan. And I don't understand why, because it's road work, and I think it should be in the road plan.
Yeah, so what did we say about it last time? I'm surprised we didn't move it out.
Well, we didn't, I think we went by it, and
No.
maybe accidentally got by it, Kevin. It should have been part of the road plan, it is road work. Because when they do all the drainage, they're gonna have to dig up the road and regrade it and repave it. It's not like they can just replace a few pipes without damaging the road. So, I'd like to have some discussion on this if the committee sees fit. Anybody wants to speak up, just speak, don't wait to be recognized. Well, if no one has anything to say, then I guess we're gonna leave it alone.
Yeah, I was just looking at our minutes, what we said last year,
Well,
or last week. I'm sorry.
your logic that it need not be a number one is good,
So we agree that we should make it a necessary and not an urgent?
yes.
So we can start with the classification?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll change it to a 2 for a classification from our point of view. Public Works can remain with a 1 as an urgent. Now, we'll discuss the fact that it was removed from the road plan and made as a standalone project. I'm not gonna, criticize the Public Works Director and his decisions. I just think that it's
It does
it
give
seems
it,
to be,
it does give it significant visibility as a separate project.
Mhm.
If it were in the road plan, it would be a lot of decisions between this piece of paper and actually doing it. Because we don't look, this document doesn't look at all the tasks within the road plan.
it's sort of expanding the amount of money that the Public Works Department is asking for the taxpayers to fund.
It's the road plan plus
Plus the-
unique projects, and this is.
And I think this came out of my discussion last year. We used to have two lines in our matrix that said ongoing drainage projects and ongoing sidewalk projects, and they had money strung out for years on end. And we removed that from the CIP program last year because they were quote unquote not standalone projects. It was a maintenance, and we reviewed those items and decided those were maintenance items. So we took them out of the matrix. So this,
Are you suggesting that perhaps this value ought to be rolled back into the road plan?
I'm suggesting that this was born of my kicking the ongoing drainage projects out of the matrix. So it's a standalone project, but the fact that it was removed from the road plan is something that I want to discuss. If it was already in the road plan, it should have just stayed there.
Does the road plan address other solely drainage projects?
Sure it does.
Yeah, and the case they made in their application, it was that the road and drainage system is in between, is in complete failure and needs to be reconstructed. So that
Could you read that
type of
again?
project-
Could you read that again, please, Kevin?
So I'll read the 3 sentences they have in here. Viking Orchards is a new development on Worthy Hill Road. As part of their approval, they're reclaiming Worthy Hill Road from Tyler Drive to the top of the hill. They also contributed to the reconstruction of the intersection with Wallace Road. The road and drainage system in between is in complete failure and needs to be reconstructed.
So the road and drainage system in between is in complete failure and needs to be reconstructed. To me, that says road reconstruction program. That does not say standalone project. That's no different than reconstructing Lesnick Road or Page Hill Road or any of the roads that they've had in the program.
Yeah, I wonder if pulling it out, or one of the reasons for pulling it out was trying to make it, like you said, more visible, and less likely to be like shuffled. Well, I know within the overall road plan, things can get shuffled back and forth depending on,
Well, the problem is,
Cost
the problem is that we don't reduce lines, so we do not reduce the road plan line at this level. So we either accept the road plan in its full $2.5 million amount and send that through, or we take some of these projects that are standalone projects and move them out and hope that they can become part of the road plan. Because
Oh, I
I don't
see.
know if we can fund them all.
oh, I see what you're saying, you said, because we can't say,
Change the value.
add that into the road plan
And we
now,
can't-
but
and we can't
move it
re-
out and hope that they do.
And we can't change the road plan dollar amount.
Yeah.
And that statement applies to the Mass Road drainage then, too, right? Or was there something
Well, the
specific
Mass
about
Road
that?
drainage is a separate project because it was discovered as a part of the sewer construction, I believe. When they did the sewers and they dug through the streets, they had to intercept drainage lines occasionally. And they found that the drain lines were all aluminum and they were all totally destroyed from the salt over the years.
So they don't roll something like that into the road plan?
Well, because they're not gonna reconstruct the road, they're just gonna, and that particular road doesn't need to be,
Oh, it's drainage only.
it's just a trench.
Very narrow trench.
in the, you know. So it's, I agree that the Mass Road drainage should be a standalone project, but I don't agree that this should be. This is road reconstruction, so. I'll accept a motion from anybody on the committee if they'd like to make a motion. Or a suggestion.
Well, if that development doesn't actually look like anything is happening there, I mean, how is it that?
I mean, before we even discuss it, we should look at the bottom line on the next page. We're going from a $2.5 million road plan to a total of $4.8 million in taxpayer-funded items that are projects for the town.
It's a lot.
Dave, do you think that all these projects could even be completed in a single year? Based on your knowledge of how this funding has gone through the Board of Selectmen and money that's been encumbered as a result of projects that maybe didn't actually get done? Or do you not want to comment? Because
I will comment, yes, they're achievable.
they are
The year-
achievable.
They're achievable in the year the money is asked for.
A lot of money.
One of the reasons I'm saying that, Mr. Chair, is that planning, or the engineering planning to move forward with many of these projects are being done this year.
Well, I can say definitively that we have way too much on this list and we're gonna have to move some of this stuff out. There's just too much here. I mean, we got hit with a $120,000 rail trail slope and culvert repair request at the last meeting that came out of the blue because it was only discovered recently. So, something here is gonna have to be moved.
And I noticed that the total line for 2013 is significantly lower, so.
Mhm. Well, before we move that, let's go on down the page and look at a few more of the other projects before we move anything. The next one down is the West Union Street Bridge and Sidewall Repair for $72,000. Rated a necessary. We saw the pictures of the
Head wall.
damaged walls on West Union Street. I would wonder why some of that couldn't be repaired rather than tear it all down, but it must be that the engineers must have determined that it is not viable to do that.
If you recall from the pictures, the head wall was small concrete blocks,
Yes, Versalock blocks.
and versus a more substantial size head wall block, which would be used in today's construction.
Okay.
So there's no removing a few layers of blocks that are being pushed out would not be, couldn't do the same construction methods today.
Okay, then we move down to the next one. 156 is the Pleasant Street Bridge Repair. I think Pleasant Street is on the road plan for next year, if I'm not mistaken. The Public Works Director said they want to do Pleasant Street next year.
Yeah. Do you have the data sheet on that?
I'm trying to find it, and they're not in order. so.
Pleasant Street. Pleasant Street Bridge replacements, 80,000. Says NHDOT could not fund this replacement in time to coordinate with the road plan.
Okay.
So is 2012 the year that they're planning to do Pleasant Street? I don't know. I assume it is based on the statement here.
Yeah, because
That's
the
the year
statement
they
of.
requested for.
I'm sorry.
That's the year they requested for it, though. That's why it's showing on 2012 on the table.
So they expect next year to be the year they do Pleasant Street. Okay?
It seems that at the top of that page, it says, when Pleasant Street is reconstructed, the bridges will require significant repairs.
So why isn't the cost of the bridge in the road plan if it's part of the road program? Why is it adding to it? I don't know.
Have bridges
Is-
typically been included in the road plan?
It's,
I-
but it says here,
I'm stretching my memory here a bit. I believe there's a possibility of state grant for the bridge
says here, no state aid available in the margin.
in the 10-year plan. That's
Right.
right.
Okay, we'll move down to the, next one is 160, is the Pleasant Street, Mass Road Improvements, Elm High, Main Street intersections for $761,000.
And that's offset by a large grant and.
$446,000 grant where it's, the state has announced were a recipient of that grant.
That was the CMAC grant,
Yes, it was.
okay? And then 150,000 is a fee from the Bog Road Development.
Yes.
So that is a project we could leave in without thinking about that one.
Although oddly, if you look at the offsetting revenues, it looks like, you know, that 150,000 is listed for 2013 instead of 2012.
Where did you see that? No?
Down the line, it's part of line 191, it doesn't have an actual number on it. for some-
Oh, yeah, they apparently declare to use it later on in the project?
Oh, okay, it's not what it is.
I don't understand either.
Yeah, that's,
That $150,000, and I'm not sure if I stated it last time or not, but it's basically an off-site improvements fee that would be collected from the developer prior to them getting final approval and permits to do the project. So really, I mean, that 150,000 may not come until that development begins.
oh, okay, so it's
Well,
not
why-
tied to the construction necessarily, it's tied to when they start.
Yeah.
Why is it structured that, when we gave, the planning board gave an approval for a project, they don't have to make good on their off-site improvement money at the time of the approval?
Not until they start their construction. That's the way that the town's been doing it for a long time.
Wow.
So their bond doesn't have to be put in place until they do.
Well, the bond is
They're
something
ready
other
to-
than off-site, isn't off-site improvements generally money that's transferred directly to the town? It's not via a bond, it's a cash payment.
Sometimes it's off-site improvements that they actually do themselves, and then
Right.
they would put up a bond.
All right, that'd be
That's
different.
not typically required until construction time, so you know, the same kinda goes for
Okay.
this, the way, the way it's done, they require it at the time of when they start their project, but
All right, well then we'll leave that alone since the CMAC grant has already been received. It says here a 55% grant.
that's right.
Yes.
All right, then the next one down is the reconstruction of Main Street and North Mass Street. We have no money available from the DOT apparently. So, at the very least, that should be moved out again.
I believe you made that consideration last,
Right. But we might even want to move it out more years because,
Yeah, it is actually showed being moved out to 2013.
right, maybe we should think about moving that out even farther. I mean, if we're only gonna handle this matrix 1 year at a time, we're gonna be doing this forever. Sometimes we should be thinking about moving other projects out when they bump into the other projects.
Oh, so all three of those numbers would just shift.
We can
over.
leave them for now, but,
That's the way it worked for the previous one too. All three, I shifted all three numbers out 1 year.
that's fine. We'll leave it alone. Go down to line 165. This year, they're proposing 75,000 for pipe inspection and camera equipment, which we moved out. Reconstruction of the,
and it was moved, no, okay, it was moved out, thank you.
moved out 1 year. Reconstruction of Maple Avenue and Tyler Drive ponds. Once again, we,
On that line, instead of the word pond, if it was detention pond,
well, I think we knew that.
okay, as long as, it's, well,
We under,
other people looking at this document may not.
well then, Brian, could
That's-
you
that's
add the word detention to the
Yep.
data, to the wording in there, please?
This goes to a lot of people on the planning board, and,
Yes, one might
but
think it's a swimming hole. or
budget,
something. Yeah.
we're not constructing ponds, it's a detention pond.
Rail trail slope and culvert repairs, line 168, for 120,000. And asset management work request tracking software, phase 2.
I would request the word software, just the word software be deleted. We're purchasing asset management work request tracking, phase 2. And phase 2 is utility implementation.
Is it software, though?
No, we already have the software. We're purchasing the services to provide the data into the software.
Oh, yeah,
So this
I
is,
remember him saying
you're
that.
purchasing services from an outside vendor?
Yes?
That wasn't explained to us.
To inspect the lines, which is essentially the data that goes into the software, such that we can then manage our storm drain and assets.
Okay, well then we'll scratch the word software off of our matrix.
Write in utility implementation.
Phase 2, utility implementation.
Okay. For line 168, do we want to put the CIPC priority as 1 on that?
Yeah, we might
Slope
wanna do
culvert
that
repairs?
since it's been. Or we can put it as a 2, as necessary, maybe not emergent.
I would support a 2. It is being driven by federal, what's that? DES, not DES.
State.
EPA.
Oh.
So we'll prioritize lines 168 as a 2 if no one else disagrees with that.
That's fine.
So now, the task is to either leave this $4.9 million line in place, which is,
Did you give, excuse me, Mr. Chair, did you give a priority for the line 168?
That was what we were putting as 2.
168 would become a 2, as you mentioned.
I didn't hear that. Thank you.
So, we have $4.9 million in addition to a $2.5 million road plan, and I don't think that's sustainable. I think that's way too much money for the taxpayers to.
Actually, Mr. Chair, it's the 2012 approved by CIP column that would be the appropriate column to look at for the numbers. So I left the proposed numbers in there as what departments proposed in the darker column.
Okay,
Approved by CIP column would be 4.563 million.
okay, Brian, I stand corrected. So it's 4.563 million in addition to 2.576 million. So we're technically looking at a little over $7 million worth of taxpayer-funded repairs here in town with no well, one of them is a grant.
What are you saying, in addition to what?
I think it's included. I think the 2.57 million is included in the
It is?
4.563.
Yeah, from the road plan, yeah.
Okay, so it's 4.5 million. Well, if you guys, if this committee, excuse me for saying you guys, but, anyway, if everyone agrees that we should leave it, we'll leave it, but I'm sure that, I hate to dump all of this onto the budget committee and the selectmen.
Well, if you were gonna move something out, I would look to like what you had suggested about the Worthley Hill being the first one to consider.
Well, does anybody want to discuss moving the Worthley Hill project line number 150? It would make a significant dent in the bottom line. That's a big project.
Would your recommendation is 1 year or more?
Just 1 year for now, and see how DPW can recover from it,
And to see if anything happens with that development.
if that development ever gets going.
And if it's 1 year, they have time to put it back into the road plan, or
Well, it would be,
for next year?
it could remain a standalone project for next year and not be incorporated into the road plan if they chose not to do so. It's their decision to do it.
Are they able to incorporate things now for next year's road plan? I don't know how long it takes to build a road plan. and submit
They
it. Just
shuffle
the 1
numbers,
year?
as far as I'm concerned, it's numbers on a piece of paper.
Quickly.
Okay.
Because in the past, Kevin, the next people down the line have reduced the road plan each year. It's never gone for the full amount
Okay.
in recent years that I can remember.
Now, I can
For the-
support.
I
Sorry,
think
go ahead.
when the road plan, Kevin, was initially a concept, it was pretty near fully funded for probably 2 to maybe 3 years.
The first few years, I agree.
Yes. Because people appreciated the concept of spreading out, improving the infrastructure of all our roads by a plan that was a 20-year plan. But then, a few years down the road, we were realizing it was perhaps more expensive than people wanted to bear.
All right, well, I would suggest we move line 150 out of this year's CIP and move it to the year 2013, the 462,000.
I'd agree with that.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Motion's been made. Anybody want to second it?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ivan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We will take that line and move it to 2013.
The other item that I thought if we needed to move any more, the number 2 would have been the sidewall repairs, the West Union Street Bridge sidewall repairs, where they have as a 2. It's only $72,000 though, so.
And they could certainly, if that became an emergency, they could do one of two things. They could fix it in-house with money that they have in the road plan or some other, they could find it somewhere, I'm sure. So, you want to make a motion on that, Kevin?
I'll make a motion to move line 154, the West Union Street Bridge sidewall repairs, 1 year out to 2013.
Well, now, is that tied in with the road plan also, or no?
No, that's a standalone project.
Standalone.
Okay, so that's not dependent on,
No.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Gail. Anybody want to discuss the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passed. The Pleasant Street Bridge, I think we should leave, because if in fact they are going to rebuild the road that year, they are going to need that money. I would have liked to have seen that incorporated into the road plan, though, instead of it out here by itself, but it is a bridge, so. In the worst-case scenario, they can repair the bridge if they don't rebuild the road, because the bridge is in failure. West Lawn, South Mass Range.
Part of the money that you see on there is also offset by the offsetting revenues line with the grant on
For what, Brian?
there's a $760,000 project for the Pleasant Street, Mast Road, Elm High, Main Street intersections.
Yes.
CMAQ grant.
Yes.
So that's shown on the following page under the offsetting revenues,
On the CTAP grant, CMAC grant.
CMAQ, yeah.
Well, that's
So-
fine.
So I'm just highlighting the point that this $4.5 million is gonna be offset a little bit by
that's really.
those grant
it's really
funding
like
dollars.
4.1,
It's really 4.1, plus then we just removed 462,000 plus 72,000, so that number's already down to maybe 3.3 million, something like that.
And do we have any other projects on the Public Works Department that we think need to be moved around? The reconstruction of the Maple Avenue and Tyler Drive detention ponds, that's deemed as necessary?
Well, if we move anything more out, if you look at the bottom line for 2013 now, and you're adding, we just moved into there, so now you're starting to pump 2013 up to where you didn't want 2012 to be.
But we still have the option of moving it in 2013.
True. Although then if you look at 2014, that's another high one.
Yeah,
Well, if you look
2013 is kind of the
if you
low
look at
spot.
2014,
Well, actually,
the big
15.
number in 2014 is the Mast Road drainage. Apparently, the
Oh.
250,000 is for the engineering, and it's actually a $1.2 million project.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that's what's driving that up.
That's where the big bump comes in that year.
And a
Plus
lot-
you have
and a lot-
500
A lot of that is covered by grants, so.
Plus, you have line 162, which is reconstruct Mast Street and North Mast Street at another over $500,000. So that's a big, those are big numbers for that year, and likely more than likely, the line 162 won't ever survive.
looking at the detention ponds line, when you go back to their input, I don't think it's captured, it's gonna probably turn into a recurring line item, as they say. There are over 60 swales and ponds that have been accepted by the town as part of the new developments over the past 20 years. Many of them are in need of major reconstruction. We have inventoried them and prioritized them. These represent the first 2, but there will be more each year, which they have not put into CIP.
Well, I don't want to make comments on that.
Okay. So, that's where these come from.
I would like more input from the Public Works Department on what a reconstruction of a pond is. We didn't really get any information from them on that subject. We just got that they need to be reconstructed well. What does it take to reconstruct a pond? I'd like to get that from them later. So do we leave that one in for now, or do we move it out
So when you say later, is that
Next
this
year.
CIP year?
next year?
But if we leave it the way it is, they're gonna possibly get funding to begin the work next year.
I'm sorry, Kevin?
I'm saying if you were saying if we want to hear more from them about this next year, and leave these as is, they're gonna work on these two and possibly get funding on these for next year.
Well, $73,000 is not gonna break the bank, so why don't we leave that in and see how they manage it and see what happens down the road?
See what they do.
Anybody wanna render an opinion?
I'd go along with that.
We got 21 minutes to finish, or we're coming
I'm
back
good.
next week.
I'm good.
Okay, so I think we're done with the Public Works Department's submissions. Solid Waste Program, all we have is bond payments. We can't change them.
That's easy.
Our offsetting revenues are what they are. Move on to page 6. Sewer Commission, Village Water Precinct, Grassmere Water Precinct are all enterprise funds. Thank you very much. Schools, we've already discussed the schools at length. They're asking for performance upgrades, which are tax dependent, and they're asking, all the rest of their submissions are for a bond article, which may or may not pass. So I don't think we really have much more to do with them.
We don't
One of the
have-
things, we have to prioritize those. I forgot, I apologize. So let's go back to, we finished all the Public Works priorities on page 5. There are no appropriation on page, rest of 5 is clean. We don't do anything with the enterprise funds, so we need to go to the school projects. Page 6, line 244. I think we should just mirror what the school department's requests are for priorities, and if everyone's in agreement, we can sketch them in right now, and we'll take care of them.
Yeah, because we're not fiddling with the amounts either, so.
So the building performance upgrades are necessary. The Phase 2 renovations, we're gonna leave it at necessary because it's a bond article. Move to page 7, line 251, facilities network. Facilities renovation work is a 2. Mountain View bond to be refinanced, that's not us. 264 is the high school track and jump facility. Now, they've got that as a 3. So maybe they'll request bonds for the school work, but not this other stuff. So we'll let them decide what they want to do with it. We'll put a 3 in for that. And 266, the theater infrastructure, we'll put a 3 in for that also. The last one would be the capital reserve fund for 300,000. We'll leave that as a desirable 3. And I think that concludes everything on the matrix that we needed to discuss, because all the rest is all offsetting revenues on the school department's page. So before we rush out of here, does anybody have any last input on this matrix before we call for a vote?
No.
I would like to say something on the record, and it's not gonna be very popular, but I'm gonna say it anyway. In the last 2 years, this committee has sat through these meetings all summer, only to have the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee decimate this CIP matrix and shove everything out years because they didn't wanna put this stuff forward to the taxpayers. And this committee spends a lot of time sitting here on Thursday nights all summer doing this work. And if the committee is going to be pushed aside again in the future, I think we need to look pretty carefully at the future of the CIP committee. Because I don't think it's fair to the people who sit on this committee and spend all summer here working on this, to have the whole matrix zeroed out and pushed out and turned into bond articles and separate warrant articles that are gonna be defeated. I've said it before, that the taxpayers in this town, if they want a progressive town, they have to invest in this capital improvement program by way of passing the budget, and the selectmen and the budget committee have to leave some of this stuff in the budget. Otherwise, we'll vote for a default budget, like some other towns do. But to continually pull this stuff out of the budget and shove it out year after year, or turn it into warrant articles only to be defeated, defeats the purpose of the Capital Improvement Committee as a planning tool for this town. The whole purpose of this committee is to try to smooth the needs of this town out over many years so that we don't get tax spikes. Well, the fact that we all want zero taxes means that the big spike is coming. Because when the trucks start breaking down, or when the schools need major repairs, or the oil tanks fail, instead of $130,000 for an oil tank, you're gonna be looking at $600,000 because you're gonna need to do remediation and all the associated cleanups that go with it. So I urge the selectmen, and I urge the budget committee to leave some of this stuff in and let the voters decide whether they want their taxes increased by the new budget, or they want a zero budget, and then they can vote for a default budget. But to continually move this out is bad planning. So, I apologize to anybody I may have offended, but that's my opinion. I've been sitting on this committee for 5 or 6 years now, and what I've been seeing, I find that our efforts are being dashed. Thank you. Okay, if we have no more to discuss, I would call for a vote on the matrix to be submitted as is to the planning board for consideration, and if we have no more discussion.
Do you want it as is or as I amend it?
As amended tonight, excuse me.
Okay.
Thank you for correcting me, Brian. As amended tonight. So Brian will prepare the final matrix based on our deliberations tonight. Everybody will be given a copy. Everybody is invited to come to the planning board meeting on August the 11th, I believe it is. August the 18th,
August
presentation to the
11th.
planning board.
It's August 11th,
It
actually.
is the 11th? That's what I thought it was.
That was the wrong date on there. We
Okay.
had
I thought it was the
looked at
11th.
that one
Thank you, Brian.
previous night.
So August 11th, I will be making a presentation to the planning board when they can either adopt it or they can consider it and adopt it at a future date. So with all that, I would request a motion to accept this program, this matrix, as amended and be forwarded to the planning board.
I'll move that we accept this matrix as it's been amended this evening and forwarded to the planning board.
Cole has made a motion to accept it as amended and to forward it. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kevin. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of this matrix, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone who abstain? So it's a unanimous decision by this committee to forward this to the planning board. I want to thank everybody here that's spent their summer here working on this. It's a thankless job, and I appreciate all the effort put in by the board members, as well as Hank and Suzanne and Earl and Nick, who could not be here tonight.
And thank you for heading it up again. Thank you.
It's a lousy job, but I don't mind doing it.
From the
Yeah, I got a big
community,
mouth, and I'm not
thank you.
afraid to open it. Okay, thank you at home. Ivan, you have something to say?
Oh, just a quick question. You're making, a newbie question. You're
Please.
making the presentation to the planning committee. You talked school board, and, selectmen and budget committee, but why the planning committee? I mean, what's the process here?
The planning board is authorized under an RSA to form and operate the Capital Improvement Committee as a planning tool for the town's budget and Board of Selectmen. We receive department head requests, we prioritize them, we put them into the matrix, we try to adjust them so that the taxes can remain fairly, not remain, to prevent spikes in the tax rate. The planning board then reviews this matrix at the planning board level. They then accept the matrix as a tool, and they forward it to the planning board and the board of the budget committee for consideration for budgetary reasons. It's in the handbook, in our package. It explains the RSA, it tells the numbers if you want to get any more information about the RSAs, they're available
I just
online.
wanted to be familiar with the path.
Well, we are considered a planning tool, this committee. We are not a budget committee, I've said it many times before. We are here to try to make everything nice and smooth for the taxpayers. It's very difficult to do that with the way we've been operating for the last 3 years. Well, this being the third year. And I pray that the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen will leave some of these stuff in and let the taxes go up, because they need to go up. I don't want to pay more taxes, anybody else does. But once you stop capital programs for multiple years, they stack up, and then suddenly you have this giant snowball that rolls down on the village, and where are you gonna get the money? Are you gonna raise people's taxes 5% over 3 years each time, so a total of 15%? Or are you gonna hit them with a 20% increase 1 year, because all the stuff has to be done? I think 5% a year is a much easier pill to swallow than 20% in 1 year. Then people can't afford to pay their taxes. So I'm sorry to be outspoken, but it's just my personal opinion. Dave knows, I got up at the deliberative session the year of the bond article for the 3 trucks, and I said right into the microphone that I thought it was bad planning. And I meant it. So, I'm not popular with everybody, but I don't really care.
You know, nobody wants to see the taxes go up, but some things just have to be done.
Right. I mean, I don't think a 20% increase is what anybody wants to see. I think maybe a few 5s or a 6 maybe, or maybe a 4 1 year. You can adjust your budget hopefully to make it work.
Those people that are not getting those raises and don't have jobs and all that, they have a different opinion too.
And I sympathize with them. I do not discount their opinion. But I do know that a progressive town has to remain on a path.
Yep.
So, with that said, I have a vote. I will call for an adjournment. Anybody want to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to adjourn CIP.
Thank you for that motion.
this-
Do I
for
have a
this
second?
year.
I'll second.
Second by Gail. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or wants to stay longer?
No.
No. Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you, Andrew.